I'm Linda Carter, 78 years old, and for 3 years I watched my son's new wife Amber systematically isolate him from our family, drain his bank accounts, and convince him I was a toxic mother who needed to be cut off. She thought she'd married a wealthy man with a dying mother who'd leave a fortune. Amber made one critical mistake. She underestimated a grandmother who spent 35 years as a private investigator, specializing in infidelity and fraud cases. When I discovered she was cheating on my son and had 2 other secret marriages she'd never divorced from, I destroyed her completely. This is my story. Subscribe now. Hit that bell for more revenge stories you won't believe. I'm 78 years old, widowed for 6 years, and I have one son named David. He's 45, successful, kind, and was happily divorced for 8 years after his first marriage ended amicably. Then he met Amber Mitchell at a business conference 2 years ago. She was 32, beautiful, charming, and within 6 months they were married. I had reservations immediately, but kept quiet because David seemed happy. The problem started 3 months after their wedding. Amber began making comments about how I was too involved in David's life. She'd roll her eyes when I called. She'd sigh loudly if David mentioned visiting me. Then the suggestions started. Maybe I should move to a retirement community. Maybe David needed space from family obligations. Maybe I was getting too old to live alone. I'm 78, but I'm perfectly healthy. I live independently, manage my own finances, drive my own car, and work part-time consulting for a private investigation firm. The same firm where I spent 35 years before retiring as a senior investigator, specializing in matrimonial fraud and infidelity cases. Amber had no idea about my background because David never mentioned it. To her, I was just an elderly mother she needed to push aside. Within a year of their marriage, David stopped calling me regularly. Our weekly dinners became monthly, then stopped entirely. When I'd call him, Amber would answer and say he was busy. She convinced him to sell the family home his father and I had bought 40 years ago because it held too many old memories. She had him close joint accounts with me that we'd maintained for emergencies. She even convinced him to skip my 77th birthday because they had other plans. I knew exactly what was happening. I'd investigated hundreds of cases just like this. A younger woman marries an older, successful man, isolates him from family, controls access to money, and positions herself to maximize the divorce settlement or inheritance. Amber was following the playbook perfectly. But I'm not just any elderly mother. I'm a former private investigator with 3 decades of experience, and I still have connections with every PI firm, process server, and court clerk in the state. So I started investigating Amber Mitchell. The first thing I discovered was that Amber Mitchell wasn't her real name. Her birth name was Amber Louise Kowalski, and she'd changed it legally 6 years ago. That's not necessarily suspicious, but combined with her behavior, it warranted deeper investigation. I contacted a colleague at the investigation firm where I still consult. Within 2 weeks, we'd uncovered Amber's complete history, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Amber had been married 3 times before David. She'd married her first husband when she was 21, divorced him 2 years later after cleaning out their joint accounts. She married her second husband at 25 and left him after 18 months with half his savings. Her third marriage was to a man 15 years older who died mysteriously of a heart attack just 14 months after their wedding. Amber inherited everything: his house, savings, life insurance. But here's the shocking part. Amber had never actually divorced husband number 2 or 3. She'd just disappeared from their lives, changed her name, moved to another state, and married David while still legally married to 2 other men. Amber wasn't just a gold digger. She was committing bigamy, which is a felony in our state. I also discovered that Amber was having an affair. She was seeing a personal trainer named Kyle who was 24 years old. My investigator colleague followed her for 2 weeks and documented 12 separate meetings at hotels, his apartment, and even in David's house while David was at work. We had photos, video, time-stamped evidence, everything. David's marriage to Amber was completely invalid because she was still married to 2 other men. Every financial transaction she'd made using David's money was potentially fraud because the marriage wasn't legal. And she'd committed bigamy, which carried a prison sentence of up to 5 years in our state. I had enough evidence to destroy Amber, but I needed to do this carefully. David was emotionally attached to her, and if I just showed up with accusations, Amber would convince him I was a jealous mother making things up. I needed David to discover the truth himself in a way that couldn't be denied, I contacted an attorney who specialized in family law and criminal fraud. Her name was Catherine Stone, and she'd worked with me on dozens of investigation cases over the years. Linda, this is bigger than just divorce. Amber's committed multiple felonies. We need to involve law enforcement. Not yet, I said. First, I need David to see who she really is. Then, we prosecute. Catherine and I devised a plan. We'd arrange for David to discover Amber's affair in a way that would make him start asking questions. Once he knew about the cheating, he'd be more receptive to the truth about her criminal history. My investigator colleague, Marcus, had been tracking Amber's affair with Kyle. They met every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon at a hotel 20 minutes from David's office. The hotel had security cameras, and Marcus had befriended the desk clerk who was willing to provide check-in records, showing Amber had been there with Kyle dozens of times over 6 months. I called David from a burner phone, disguising my voice slightly. Mr. Carter, this is the front desk at the Riverside Inn. We found a credit card belonging to your wife, Amber Carter. She left it here yesterday. You can pick it up anytime. David called me that evening, confused. Mom, I got a weird call from a hotel saying Amber left her credit card there, but she told me she was at a yoga retreat yesterday. Why would she be at a hotel? Maybe you should go pick up the card and ask them, I suggested carefully. David went to the hotel the next day. The desk clerk, coached by Marcus, said, "Oh yes, Mrs. Carter has been a regular guest here for months. She usually checks in with a younger gentleman on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Very friendly couple." David demanded to see the records. The clerk showed him 6 months of check-ins, always under Amber's name, always with Kyle listed as her guest. There were even copies of the registration forms with Amber's signature. David was devastated. He called me crying. Mom, Amber's been cheating on me for months. I confronted her and she denied everything at first, then admitted it and said it was my fault for being boring. She said if I give her $300,000, she'll agree to a quiet divorce. Otherwise, she'll make my life hell. David, before you agree to anything, I need you to come to my house. There's more you need to know about Amber. When David arrived, I showed him everything. The investigation report, the proof of Amber's 3 prior marriages, the documentation showing she'd never divorced husband number 2 or 3, the evidence that she'd married David while still legally married to 2 other men, making their marriage invalid and making Amber a bigamist. Your marriage to Amber is legally void, I explained. She's committed bigamy, which is a felony. Every dollar she's taken from your accounts is potentially theft by deception because the marriage wasn't valid. She's a career con artist who's done this multiple times. David was in shock. Why didn't you tell me this before? Would you have believed me a year ago? You were in love. Amber had convinced you I was the problem. I needed you to see her betrayal yourself first. Now you know the truth. David was angry, hurt, and ready for justice. What do? We prosecute, I said. Catherine Stone is ready to file criminal charges. Amber will go to prison. Catherine filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. The charges included bigamy, theft by deception, fraud, and identity fraud. The prosecutor was very interested because Amber had victimized multiple men across state lines, making it a pattern of criminal behavior. The police arrested Amber 2 weeks later. She was charged with 3 counts of bigamy, multiple counts of fraud, and theft. Her bail was set at $200,000, which she couldn't pay because all her money had come from the men she'd defrauded. Amber's case went to trial 4 months later. David testified about how she'd isolated him from family, controlled his money, and demanded $300,000 for a divorce from a marriage that was never legal. Her second husband testified that Amber had disappeared after emptying their joint accounts, and he'd never heard from her again. Her third husband's family testified about the suspicious circumstances of his death and how Amber had inherited everything. The prosecutor presented evidence of the bigamy, the affair, the financial fraud, and Amber's pattern of targeting successful older men. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Amber Kowalski is a career criminal who has spent the last decade defrauding men through fake marriages and theft. She never divorced her previous husbands. She married the defendant's son while committing bigamy. She isolated him from his family and stole his money. This is not a case of a failed marriage. This is organized fraud. The jury convicted Amber on all charges. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in state prison. Ms. Kowalski, you have systematically defrauded and victimized multiple men through bigamous marriages and theft. You are a danger to society. 8 years in state prison. Amber tried to appeal, claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. The appeal was denied. She's currently 3 years into her sentence and will serve at least 6 years before being eligible for parole. David's marriage was legally annulled since it was bigamous from the start. He recovered most of his money because the court ruled that all financial transactions during the invalid marriage were fraudulent. Amber was ordered to pay full restitution, though she has no money. David and I rebuilt our relationship. He apologized for letting Amber isolate him from me, and I forgave him completely. She's a professional con artist. She knew exactly how to manipulate you. I'm just glad you're free. Now, at 78, I still do consulting work for the private investigation firm. I've started giving talks at senior centers about recognizing financial exploitation and fraud, especially from family members and romantic partners. I spent 35 years investigating fraud, I tell audiences. The signs are always the same: isolation from family, controlling access to money, moving too fast in relationships, refusing to share information about their past. Trust your instincts and verify everything. David is now dating someone age-appropriate, who has her own career and respects family relationships. He's learned to be more cautious and to value the people who truly care about him. Amber will be released from prison when she's 43 years old. She'll have a felony record, no money, and a reputation that will follow her forever. Every future employer, landlord, or romantic partner will find out she's a convicted bigamist and fraud when they search her name online. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about sending my son's wife to prison. The answer is absolutely not. Amber is a career criminal who victimized multiple men, including my son. She deserves every day of that sentence. I'm 78 years old. I'm a retired private investigator with 35 years of experience. I'm a mother who protected her son from a predator. And I'm a woman who proved that age brings expertise that criminals consistently underestimate. Amber thought she'd found an easy target, a successful man with an elderly mother who could be pushed aside. She learned that some elderly mothers spent decades investigating people exactly like her. She chose the wrong family,